Hey, what's up, everybody? Time for another game theory video. If you like the videos, like some silly comment, share, support the channel if you want. I appreciate it. Thanks. So I got asked to sort of do this video, and this video, honestly, you already know that I can ramble and dissect the game. So I'm gonna try to not to go too deep into this because it would take too long to talk about just all the differences. But people ask like, what don't you like about Super Turbo, kind of thing. So let's just talk about things I don't like about certain Street Fighter games and things that I think are good. When we're talking about the progressions of games, so we're going to just generalize Street Fighter 2. We'll have the Super Turbo there, with Street Fighter 2. All the alphas are drastically different. Street Fighter 3, we'll just say that is its own beast. Street Fighter 4 is its own beast. Street Fighter 5 is its own beast, although I guess it has changed, And then we also have, of course, Street Fighter 6. Yes, I'm very clever with slimy. So things I don't like about Street Fighter 2, and again, I'm not going to talk about every fucking thing when I think about it, you know what I mean? But things that I don't think that are good, and say Super Turbo specifically, something that I think is dumb is, let's just talk about random shit. Of course, I don't think that there should be a random input for doing special moves. I actually don't mind random damage in the context of Super Turbo, but would I put it in a game? Probably not. I don't mind random dizzies in Super Turbo. Would I put in a random dizzy kind of stuff, different values of dizzy in a game? No, I probably wouldn't, but I don't mind it in Super Turbo. And I can say I don't mind dizzy combos, and I don't mind even the idea of re-dizzy combos. That actually doesn't bother me, even if it was a new school game, especially when you have things like a damage buffer. So if you were to get hit by a dizzy combo and the combo actually, even if it has the potential to re-dizzy you, the damage buffer is making this not do a lot. So actually, the idea of dizzy combos and re-dizzy combos actually don't bother me at all. And I would be fine with having re-dizzy combos, even if I made a Street Fighter, to be honest with you. But the idea of randomness in itself in a newer game, I probably wouldn't have. But in the context of Super Turbo, it doesn't bother me. But the random thing that I do think is bad in Super Turbo would be, it shouldn't be random to do a special move, that kind of shit. That shit is obviously stupid. Something that I do think is dumb in Super Turbo is, in Super Turbo, they added, and I don't know exactly what it is. It's like after the first hit or after the second hit. I don't remember what it is exactly. It's either the first hit or the second hit. After that, you get one more frame of like pushback and like less stun for all the attacks afterwards. And I've never seen that actually. I don't know if there's an interview, if they ever actually explained the developers why they did that. But if you've ever seen combo videos for old school Street Fighter, and say if you were to pick a game like Hyper Street Fighter 2, where you can pick all the different versions of the characters, you often will see people do combo videos versus Super and below. And that's because they take that extra one frame of stun for the whole combo after the first hit. Or the second, it's either the first hit or second hit, however you phrase it. And, again, I don't know why they did it, but I mean, it's very obvious. You can put in, say, the Hyper Street Fighter 2 Turbo. You can pick the Super version of Ken, and you can pick the Super Turbo Super version of Ken. And even though they're like the same character, you know what I mean? One character, their Fierce Dragon Punch hits properly because you do more stun to them, right? And again, it's a weird thing. I don't know why they fucking added it in Super Turbo, because it affects so many different things. Even if you're like mashing on a short, you can get one more short versus these characters. You know what I mean? If you're doing that. It fucks up certain moves. Like, again, Ken's Flaming Dragon Punch is fucked up in Super Turbo. Doesn't hit properly. Vega's Roll doesn't hit properly. Again, I don't know why they got rid of it. I would theorize potentially maybe they didn't like certain combos, like Ken being able to do the up and down air hurricane kick and comboing after it versus big characters. Maybe they didn't like, Vega's roll having the potential to dizzy you off of getting hit by one roll. I don't know, but I think it's stupid. That's something that's in Super Turbo. I don't know why that's in there, but generally speaking, though, Super Turbo, things that are archaic, of course, I would say that and games need to progress. after Super Turbo, because when you think of Super Turbo, you think of like, I think the most generic example you would think of is say, oh, Dalsum has a bit higher block when he's like ducking, right? You know what I mean? But although Super Turbo has a lot of different standing blocks and those are still noticeable, I don't think there's a drastic enough difference when you're like versing a big character and they're like duck crouching. I think that is something, a good progressive change that came into Street Fighters or Street Fighter, you know what I mean? More different character variety. Of course, now we're getting into new games where characters are all the fucking same sizes, depending, despite, I should say, how big or small they are, which is retarded. But in Super Turbo, of course, there's character specific combos and all that kind of stuff, but there's not enough of it. I would say there's not enough different stuff. You know, excuse me, and God, you could get so nitty gritty talking about things, but there's no counter hits again in Super Turbo, which I think is archaic. There probably should be counter hits. I've just said if I was making a Street Fighter, I would have just so you can still have like taking a hit to get a throw, jump ins would do extra counter hit damage, whatever. But no counter hit stuff or counter hit stun on ground attacks. I think that's kind of archaic. But generally, I think Super Turbo is a game that's held up very well. Of course, there's some things that are archaic and bad, but generally speaking, I think you can look at Super Turbo and say it's a pretty amazing game. Once you get to Alpha, when I look at Alpha, I would say even as a purist, I don't think, when it was coming out, I remember people were making a big deal about air blocking, but um, even as like a more purist, I don't really mind air blocking in Street Fighter Alpha, to be honest with you. There's a lot of, I think it actually adds a depth of layer to the game as well in certain aspects, and especially if you think about, you know, the whole role dynamic in the game and say something like Akuma's fireball is so fucking powerful. You know what I mean? Some characters or situations seems like, man, I want to try to air block, chicken block a fireball and then make him guess if I'm going to roll or not. So air blocking, and sometimes for air blocking, you should have taken the hit because you can get fucked up for air blocking worse because you air blocked the move. Of course, some characters in certain situations, you might think Charlie's flash kick is almost like that was purposely put in there to hurt him in certain areas, but it also adds another layer. So even as a purist, I actually don't really mind air blocking in Street Fighter Alpha, the original, and it's almost a necessary evil in certain situations. So I don't really mind it. I don't really care about chain combos per se, but I've said many times, as ghetto as Street Fighter Alpha is, I don't think it's a game that you look at, and for the most part, you don't think it's like a badly made game, a badly designed game. Rose doesn't make sense. Rose is kind of like a glitch in the system, but and you shouldn't be able to roll 99% of the moves with supers and everything like that, because certain supers then don't hit correctly. And rolling, it can feel kind of clusterfucky, but generally speaking, if you just look at the game for what it is, the game doesn't feel that bad. It's just fucking ugly. That's all. You know what I mean? Again, I don't care for chain combos per se and stuff like that, and being able to roll everything, it's just kind of like it's the game. You know what I mean? But it is what it is, right? Of course, Alpha 2 is a terrible game. I don't know how many times I made so many videos talking about it. I don't think you can say, I would not even be able to tell you what is something good that Alpha 2 brought to Street Fighter. I literally couldn't tell you. The only thing I could say that I could even think of that maybe, and this is in terms of actually playing, because of course Alpha 2 is a cool game. Cool music, cool backgrounds, the vibe is fine, vibe is cool even. But the game, just a terribly designed game all around. It's just a really, really bad game. Alpha 2 is a bad game. I can't think of anything good that Alpha 2 legitimately brought to Street Fighter other than, and I've said this before, it still was showing that Capcom can make cool characters. Like characters like Rolento. Rolento is an amazing character in the grand scheme of fighting games, I think. Capcom did the Final Fight characters very well. Gen's interesting enough too. Gen's an interesting character. Sakura maybe not as interesting, but look at that. Those were I guess 2 out of 3 ain't bad, right? Was there another new character in Alpha 2? I don't think there was, right? I don't think so, but generally speaking, Alpha 2 is just it's a terrible game, but it did bring Rolento as a cool character. Gen is a cool character. Sakura has cool music. You know what I mean? But even Sakura, not that bad. I mean, she's not that bad. You know what I mean? Oh, something I forgot to say about Super Turbo. People might think that I don't like it, but actually, Super Turbo, I like the throws in Super Turbo. I actually like the idea of characters, and when I think about this, some people don't like throw loops, but I even like the idea that mash throws are the one throw that you can't tech. I actually think that's even healthy for Street Fighter. I think that's a unique aspect of Street Fighter, and I like that actually, right? Street Fighter Alpha 3 is such a radically different game. I don't even think, let's not even get into it. It's just like, it's a clusterfuck. It's like such a different Street Fighter. It would take so long to even just even take little tidbits at, you know what I mean? Because you could deep divulge into any of these games to get very specific, right? I mean, fuck, you could talk about the way the overheads work in Super Turbo, how it doesn't do more stun if the guy is standing. Even I think that's kind of interesting, to be honest with you. But again, I could really dissect these games. But Alpha 3, I will say that when you think of Alpha 3, again, it's just another example of custom combos are terrible for every game that they're in. You know what I mean? They just shouldn't be in games. The only reason to ever put custom combos in a game, I feel like, for Street Fighter is just because every game has to be different. So you know what? We had it in this game. We had it in this game. You know what? That's your one, every game's got to be different. You know what I mean? So Alpha 3, it's got a cool vibe too. It's very different. There's so many different things about it. But when I think about fighting games per se, in terms of like Street Fighter, I guess I would think, say the guard meter. I think guard meter is interesting, but again, that's another problem of that. It feels like every game that has a guard meter, if there's custom combos are the best way to break the guard meter. So it's just like it's like badly designed in that sense. But I don't like hate guard meter. I guess I think that's you could fiddle with that, right? Again, Street Fighter 3. Street Fighter 3 is not a real Street Fighter to me. All the games. Street Fighter 3 is another game that, if I watch it, I can't even tell you the last time I watched this. I don't even know the last time I watched a Street Fighter 3 match. I probably watched the match last year. I think I did. God, I don't even know. Did I watch any matches of Street Fighter 3 last year, even in boredom? I'm going to say I did, but I don't remember. So, God, I don't remember. Street Fighter 3, I don't really consider a real Street Fighter, but when you think of, I guess Street Fighter 3 has EX moves. Every game's got to be different. So Street Fighter 3, Second Impact, and I've had EX moves. That's okay. But EX moves in general are terrible. I've made so many videos about why EX moves are terrible, and there's no real argument for it other than that every game's gonna be different. I guess Street Fighter 3 and Street Fighter 4 at the same time. I think about Street Fighter 4, and I think about some people like the throws and the option selects with throws, and that stuff's kind of in Street Fighter 3 to a certain extent as well, right? But I don't mind the throwing for Street Fighter 4. I think it's fun in its own way. I don't think I would remake Street Fighter with it, but throws in Street Fighter 4 actually don't bother me doing that. It's fun in its own way. Some people complain about Street Fighter 4 and the backdashes were too good. Backdashes, I think, feel good to use. I think that's an ambiguous term, but feel is kind of ambiguous. What I feel might not be what you feel, but I don't think that backdashing feels bad to use in Street Fighter 4. When you think about that compared to other Street Fighters, I mean, Street Fighter 4 is just, too easy of inputs. Street Fighter 4 is just, again, Ultra getting rewarded for losing is stupid. Too easy of commands, I guess. You know what I mean? Just And because the commands are so easy, in a sense, you have to tone down the moves. You know, oh, Street Fighter 3 has the. I like target combos. Target combos I can see being in other Street Fighters. That's not bad. Yeah, they should be reworked, but Street Fighter 5, I've said this before. I actually don't hate Street Fighter 5. I don't hate Street Fighter 5. I mean, well, I don't want to play it, but when, Street Fighter 5, I've said this before. Street Fighter 5 to me, when they were making Street Fighter 5, and I said it before, and I was like, it just feels like a game that they're trying to bring in that 3D audience to the game. And the way that you poke in the game, the way that you fish for counter hits, it feels like you're playing a fucking 3D game. And it feels like it was another version of Tekken vs Street Fighter to me. Like when they were going like, oh, when they're at the blackboard or the, making up ideas for Tekken vs Street Fighter 5 feels like another version idea of what they were going to do for Tekken vs Street Fighter. Trying to bring in that 3D audience to a definitely Street Fighter game, but a sort of mindset that 3D players enjoy it. More heavily frame data oriented, the way that you poke in the game, the way that you 3D games, you know what I mean? You're fishing for that counter hit to your launcher, you know what I mean? Oh, your counter hit, now you get this combo. Street Fighter 5 to me is the Street Fighter equivalent of a 3D game like that. Oh, I'm fishing for my launcher is my medium that I link off of. You know what I mean? The way that you poke, such heavy emphasis on frame data in the game. But I don't mind V-Trigger. Some people probably complain about V-Trigger. I don't hate V-Trigger. It's whatever. Street Fighter 5, just again another game of that. Killing the. So many games where it's just the fundamental problems that are. It's like simple things that are bad with games. You know what I mean? So Street Fighter 5, it was whatever. I don't hate Street Fighter 5. I don't care to watch it. You know what I mean? But it's not like when I look at the game when it was first made. At least it's not like, oh God, this is the worst game ever. You know what I mean? It's just kind of like, it's like trying to bring in 3D elements. Street Fighter 6, we've already made enough videos about Slimer here. I don't know. Anyway, I don't know. I had to make the video a little bit more interesting for me because people were like, oh, talk about Super Turbo. Talk about the things you don't like. I mean, and talk about, get really in depth. It's like, dude, you could talk for hours about all this kind of shit because the games are so different. You could talk about just the juggle system. You know what I mean? Just like, I need like literal specifics if you want me to like rack my brain because, I don't know. Anyway, if you like the videos, like, sub, silly comments. Excuse me. If you like the videos, like, sub, silly comments, share, support the channel. I forgot my own catchphrase. Like, support the channel if you want. Super chat, PayPal, Patreon if you want. It helps the channel. I don't know. I need more specific questions, I guess, in the end.